Thank you, Chair Collins, Vice Chair Murray, members of the committee. This is the first time I've been on this side of the dais. I have to say the altitude difference is affecting me a little bit. It really is an honor to be here to argue against this rescissions package on behalf of all of you, as appropriators. And now I want to be abundantly clear. I like Eric Schmidt a lot, but this is a very important point, and it's actually fatal to the rescissions package. Every single program that Senator Schmidt just mentioned has already been canceled. Every single program, and there's a longer list that was on a Fox News Chiron, and Senator Graham and I have kind of gone over all of this. There are a bunch of different examples of terrible sounding things. They are all done, and they all belong in the previous federal fiscal year. So now that it's Marco Rubio's State Department, and Marco Rubio's USAID agency, and now that it is Donald Trump's White House, none of these things are happening. This is a rescission of Trump's CR in the current federal fiscal year. And so if you have a problem with any of those programs, let Lindsay and I write a bill that prohibits the use of funds for any of those seemingly improper uses of funds. That's the way to do this. Colleagues are being asked on this committee to cut programs that I know each one of you have personally prioritized, because we get the letters. Whether you're chair or the ranker of a subcommittee, you get a letter from your colleagues saying, could you please prioritize XYZ program? And many of the programs that I'm talking about right now, in the same time period, we are receiving letters, please save this, please save that, please plus up that. That's what we're cutting right now in this rescissions package. We do not have to spend foreign assistance dollars in the same way that we always have been spending foreign assistance dollars. There's plenty of room for reform. You're pushing on an open door. And in fact, the administration has it until the end of next year. This is 2-year money. There's no rush on this. This is 2-year money to align this funding with its new priorities. But we're being asked to rescind billions of dollars without even knowing which programs are being canceled. Just so you understand how this legislation works, it's big baskets of money. So you have no idea whether the program that you are prioritizing is going to be cut or not, and they are not providing any clarity about that. You would think that if you're asking the Congress to use this extraordinary authority under statutory law, that you would have a line by line, here's what we're cutting, here's what we're keeping, here's what we're cutting, here's what we're keeping. The answer that we are going to receive is, let me take that under advisement and get back to you, or I don't know, that's none of your business, or I'm not sure what it is. There is no reason not to have specificity other than the math doesn't add up. The things that you care about are being cut in here, and they don't want to specify it. And that brings me to what is definitely in this package. $900 million in cuts from global health programs, including PEPFAR and efforts to combat diseases like malaria, TB, and polio. $1.3 billion in cuts to humanitarian assistance, which save lives, provide food and shelter and water, and support victims of sexual assault. And $4.6 billion in cuts to economic development assistance to key partners, whether it's Jordan with increasing regional tension, the Philippines as it counters Chinese aggression, the Burmese opposition, or Ukraine. And gone is $1 billion in support for organizations like UNICEF. Everybody that was opposed to those things that were on that Fox Chiron, everybody that found some of the things that Senator Schmidt talked about as objectionable, also hastened to say, I don't want to cut UNICEF, I don't want to cut PEPFAR, I don't want to cut the World Food Program. Guess what is in this rescissions package? All of those things are being cut, and none of the things that you object to. They've already been eliminated. This is not just a question of policy. This is also a question of what this committee is even for. Being a Senate appropriator is an honor. It means something. It means that the executive branch proposes and the legislative branch disposes. It means that we, as the Article I branch, hold the purse strings that is subject to cloture. So what's at stake here is more than the particular provisions of the rescissions package. It is whether we're going to willingly set up a situation where bipartisan negotiations are ripped up whenever there is a trifecta. If that's what you want, I think you should vote yes. But if you want to preserve your prerogative for yourself, for your home state, and for this institution, then this is not a particularly close call. Why be an appropriator and just turn around and surrender your authority? Because it is SFOPs today, but it's going to be THUD, it's going to be AG, it's going to be Labor H, it's going to be Milcon VA, it's going to be CJS tomorrow. So I encourage all of my colleagues on a bipartisan basis to think hard about the precedent that we would be setting if we voted yes on this package. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, Director. Good to meet you. Thank you for being here. I'm going to try to get some clarity on numbers. In the package, you propose to rescind $500 million from the USAID global health programs that Secretary Rubio is trying to move to the State Department. That account funds a wide range of bipartisan priorities, and so I just kind of want to walk them with you, and you can tell me the extent of the cuts. So are you cutting funding for maternal and child health and Gavi or nutrition? And if so, by how much?
Again, Senator, this account was structured to give you a reflection of the unobligated balances in those main accounts. We will have substantial global health funding at the end.
How about, so the answer is?
Family planning and it's PEPFAR.
Hold on, I don't want to
Family planning and PEPFAR.
Yeah, I don't want to talk over each other, okay?
Sure.
TB, malaria, polio, is there a cut there? And if so, how much?
Again, those have been priorities that we have had, as you've seen in our budget. But again,
Director, it's fine if you want to say you're not going to tell me, but we don't have to launch into our talking points. I'm just trying to get a number, and it's pretty customary in front of the Appropriations Committee with the Director of the Office of Management and Budget, who is proposing to rescind dollars, for me to say, are you going to cut this? And if so, by how much? And I don't think it's actually a sufficient answer to say we see unobligated balances and we'll either get back to you or not. So what about family planning? Are you cutting that?
yes.
How much?
$500 million.
Okay. Pandemic prevention?
Again, there are two accounts for global health. $500 million for family planning and $400 million for PEPFAR. The extent to which you want us to be specific is not a test and a standard in which you hold yourselves up to with regard to appropriations bills. You don't ask us to say, we don't ask the Congress to say we want a rack-up of every grant and recipient in every specific line item and program. We work with the allocations that you give us, and there's obviously back and forth as it pertains to the interactions between the legislative and executive branch.
Yeah,
We've given you the extent to which the top line accounts are impacted, and the main story is the extent to which the unobligated balances are flush.
Could we please take turns? Thank you. You're proposing to rescind $1.3 billion in addition to $1.5 billion in emergency funds that you said you won't spend for humanitarian assistance. The big chunks of this are Sudan, Syria, Ukraine, and DRC, and those are roughly equal amounts that we're currently spending. Are you planning on distributing the reductions equally among those four baskets? Do you have an idea of which of these humanitarian crises are going to get less funding? Or do you consider that your prerogative to decide after we enact this rescissions package?
Again, we are looking at the flexibilities that you've given us within appropriation.
Do you think it's your prerogative to decide which of these to defund, or do you think it's the legislature's prerogative?
You all write appropriations bills. You have allocations that are set in those appropriations bills. We take an assessment as to what is there in terms of unobligated balances, and we make a decision as to what is necessary. But the notion, unless you've written into the law, in terms of your statutory expectations, there is great flexibility there, and much of, I think, quite frankly, the fake news this year has been the extent to which we are pursuing our flexibilities into the law to make sure that funding is aligned with our priorities.
Let me try it this way, Director. It's plainly true that you're exercising your authorities to the maximum extent of the law, and then we can have an argument about whether or not you're exceeding your statutory and constitutional authorities. But it's certainly within the prerogative of the legislative branch when considering a rescissions package to say, this thing isn't specific enough for me to vote yes. This is actually our call now. And if you're not going to give us any specificity and say, look, we've got the authority to ignore you, that's actually true. And then we've got the authority to reject this package.